welcome back to the Sanditon Chronicles. I'm Maureen. We're here with our co-host Janice, and we are diving into episode 2, season 2 today. And we are going to start putting these out on Mondays at 6. So right after you watch your episode, you can come right in on Monday and dive into the recap. So we're just gonna go right in. There's a lot of stuff that happened in this episode. A lot, and like we said last week, this was a builder episode. We had new characters introduced last week, old ends tied off last week, and now this week we have storylines starting to be built up to go forward.
Yes, and really last week, one of the things I don't think we explained or talked about enough in a clear way, and that is the contrast between Lennox and Colburn. Their especially their interaction with Charlotte and reaction to Charlotte.
Yeah.
So like Lennox is right away intrigued, very interested in her, makes it apparent that he is admiring her. And Colburn, you know, they're immediately in a fight, kind of, you know, they seem to have a disagreement, although he keeps sending mixed messages, I would say.
Yeah.
Because
it's like he thrives on the fight, like he's
the argument. Yeah. Yeah, the debate, as it were. But he does hear her out most of the time. He just comes from a very traditional view of women and how he wants his girls to be raised. Anyway, we'll get into that more, but and Lennox is like just welcoming or refreshed by her approach and candor. And I just don't think we said that enough.
Yeah. Well, I think Colburn was refreshed by it too. I think he longed for that. I think that he just doesn't know how to express anything. I think that he's been, and this is said in this episode where it's at the end, but she calls it a house of silence, a mausoleum. Yeah. That's what he's been living in for certainly since Leonora was baby.
Right.
So it's
since his wife died,
that has challenged him. He's had no one who's challenged him. And I think he needs that. And I think he likes that. And I think that he craves that a little bit, but Lennox is not as hampered by grief, I don't think, as Colburn is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I do think, well, we'll get into it some more. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Because it's in this episode that we really get to learn a lot, not only about Colburn, but his housekeeper.
Yes, I like her. And
I do too.
Wheatley is her name. Mrs. Wheatley.
W-E-H-A-T-L-E-Y. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And so what we open in on basically is Charlotte walking to her position, and I didn't see who was with Lennox. I don't think Fraser was with him, but there's like 2 other guys riding on the beach with them, and he stops her. And I know this is one thing I wanted to bring up too from the last episode is in the parade, Colonel Lennox stops the parade procession to make eye contact with Charlotte and bow his head, and then he keeps going. And he does the same thing here on the beach, where he stops everything he's doing to talk to Charlotte. And I mean, he's this contrasted nature himself, because he's saying in last episode, it would be miserable to be a military wife. You would never know when your husband's going to be away or here. You never know if he's going to come back alive or dead. But yet he continues to pursue Charlotte. And you see him here and he's like, hey, good day. And I felt like he was a little pushy in this interaction, but I think that's just his nature. That he's just very forward. And even when she says, excuse me, oh, do you have an appointment? Not your business. Let him go. But I'm not Team Lennox, so maybe that's why I felt that way. Because I also more Darcy-esque thing to him, so I'm more Team Colburn.
Well, we'll see how it goes. I think they each play their role, and
they do.
Charlotte moving forward with her life, but I have to say the actor who plays Lennox, I really like that actor, and he's been in so many roles where he's the bad guy. Yeah, and so I'm pulling for him to at least be a good guy in this series.
I don't know. I mean, we see something come out of him in this episode that I'm not sure he's going to be a thoroughly good guy. Maybe he'll be a mix.
Yeah. Well, like most of us, we're not either just good or bad.
That's true. I like my awesome people to be black and white, though.
Well,
that's not true. There's never been an awesome character that's been black and white, so that's not true.
Even as it came out of your mouth.
Yep. And then when the end he says you'll get an invite, and actually the first time I watched it I stopped and wondered, invite to what? What is this invite for? He doesn't even say. He just says you'll get an invite and then scampers off.
Yes. And he says he says he admires her candor.
Mhm.
One of the things he says when he stops to talk to her,
Yeah.
because she was apologizing for running out, when she went to the church
episode
to
one,
really
yeah.
mourn Sydney, and he's not unhappy with her at all. He admires her. So, and in the promo for the series, what they said about Lennox is that he can't help himself from pursuing her.
Yeah, because I think that for all that he's saying that it's hard to be a military wife, I think he sees all the characteristics in Charlotte that could be. Like, she's strong, she's not meek, she's smart, she's courageous, she's kind, she's a caretaker of people.
And such a contrast to most of the women he meets.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, look at her and Allison. Allison I like, but she annoyed me more this episode.
Yeah. She shows her immaturity and lack of experience.
But that's how a lot of the women were at that age who were marriageable age.
Yep, that's right. They were young.
And this is the episode where Arthur tells Georgiana that Sydney was in Antigua for her.
Right. And we don't know why. And I guess I gathered from the interview I just listened part of Justin Young, that this is kind of a mystery throughout this first series. So I know we want to know, don't we?
We're not going to know until season 3.
Now, there was something I read, and I can't remember where, that evidently we're going to find out that Georgiana has some relatives that are, from her father, that are trying to go after some of her money. Okay. But I don't know. We'll see if that comes true or not. If that was somebody's speculation. I mean, that was the
they better be providing snippets all along the way. I'm gonna have words for Justin Young if there are not snippets all along the way. That's gonna drive me crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one way they can justify it is that not only is it a long ways to Antigua, but communication then was so slow.
Yeah, because even Arthur says it'll take weeks, and Georgiana says she'll make her own inquiries. But I think that the fact that too that no one knows why he was there, no one knew that he was there, so no one even knows where to start. Right. I mean, you don't know what context he had down there. You don't know who he was talking to, so it's not like you could just, oh, yeah, I know that guy. I'll go reach out to him. That's not how it's going to work. They know nothing about anything and why he was there. Yep.
Well, somebody knows something that they just don't know who to ask at this point. Exactly. It's going to take somebody doing a bunch of inquiry.
Yeah. And I think, did I hear that right? That Arthur and Tom, I think they said in the last episode, that they have a guy who's down there looking into it still.
I think they were going to have
episode 1.
I think they said they had their own man that was going to look. They didn't say if it was somebody already there or going there.
Yeah.
They just didn't say.
Well, I'm kind of bummed that I have to wait.
Well, maybe it won't.
It'll be true, good. It'll be worked into the storyline well. But I mean, that's how you keep people watching. That's how you keep people reading a book, is you don't give them everything that they want right away. You make them wait.
It's the mystery of it.
I just am not a patient person by nature. I don't enjoy
I understand. And I would say the world in general is not, and that's why we binge things, right?
Exactly.
So Charlotte arrives at Herrick Park, and she goes to the front door, rings a bell, no answer, and then has to wander around the side and back to try and find what I would assume to be the servants' entrance.
It looked like stables at first when I first saw that.
Oh yeah.
Just those doors.
Yeah.
But then they're like, you're late. How is she supposed to know to come down this way when she's never been shown any part of that house before ever?
And not to mention that when they were on the beach, I don't think he gave her a time. I'll just see you on Monday.
Yep.
So, and he didn't act like she was late. Obviously, Wheatley thought she was late.
I don't even think Wheatley really thought that. I think that she was just letting her know. I think that was probably how she was letting her know this is the time you're supposed to be there, but that's just her personality.
Yeah. Anyway, and also,
go ahead.
As we find out, Wheatley has money on her succeeding. So she has an interest in her arriving.
Yeah. And I like that she says that, no one lasts a month here.
No one what?
No one lasts a month here. No governess lasts a month.
Yeah.
And I think that was an interesting way to let us know the situation we're about to walk into, is to have it written out like that, to have it played out like that.
Right. And it was her way of challenging Charlotte.
Yeah. And now I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because this is about Wheatley. Near the end, Colburn gives her a shilling. Has it already been a month in this one episode?
We don't know. I don't know, because they have.
That's the only situation where it seemed like a month. No other situation is in it seemed like a month, but Colburn gave her money and she said,
well, I thought
I have a shilling on you staying the month.
I thought it was a month or just a week.
A month.
It was a month.
It was a month.
I don't know, but he paid her.
So I'd like that explained.
Huh?
I'd like that explained. I'd like to know a timeline there.
Yeah. We really have no idea how much time went by, because it doesn't seem like it was a month, but we don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, when Sydney's death happens, Mary's in black, and then later on in that same episode, it's been 3 months. So I mean, it's possible. But I get a feeling Colburn doesn't like his daughter or his niece very much.
Well, I think that he's frustrated with them, and they're not behaving the way he thinks young ladies should, but yet he isn't really providing much to them.
He's not giving them any source to change their behavior at all. And his goal is to like when he reintroduces Charlotte to them, he openly shames them by displaying all of their faults right in front of them.
Yes. And also, but I do think, as we'll see when we see a little bit later in the episode, when his daughter comes in with the frog in a jar,
the snail,
that's it, snail in the jar, that he at first is really pretty cold about it, but he ends up being pretty sweet about it at the end.
Yeah.
So obviously there are times when he shows them some affection, but
at least Leonora.
Yeah, at least Leonora. And yeah, it's because of the way that Augusta behaves, the older girl, for those of you who are new to this, she is walking around with a huge chip on her shoulder. And it just takes every opportunity in the beginning to be snide and pretty hard to love at that point.
And I get why. And I think that the one thing she tells Charlotte after that encounter, she says, you'll need to learn how to parry if you want to survive in this house. And I think that she's speaking from personal experience because clearly Colburn is cruel to her by saying the things that he's saying. So I think her reaction is to be as she is. But even like when Charlotte says, I don't want to discipline her, I want to know her, I want to understand her. And Wheatley says something along the lines of, it's obvious, she's 18 and not long orphaned. That's her whole problem. And what she needs is someone to compassionately understand this girl just lost everything. She's only been at this house for 16 months and 11 days. She has nobody who cares for her left.
Right. And it reminds me a lot of the way that Charlotte talked to Sydney about Georgiana.
Yeah.
In the first series, that she was understanding how, again, what she's saying is similar to the way Charlotte's feeling too.
Yeah.
That Charlotte feels, yes, she's got all these friends here, but nobody seems to, with the exception maybe of Arthur, seems to really be in her headspace, as it were,
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes her such an interesting character, is that she is so empathetic to people and wants to understand their underlying emotions. And I think we see that in a lot of Jane Austen's writing, don't you?
Yeah. Because I think that Jane Austen is a writer who really understood pain of grief and being lonely and alone and being opposite of what society and everyone else expected of her and having to deal with the consequences of that. Right. And I think by nature that made her, if not a compassionate person, a person who understood compassion.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's good that it is exactly what Augusta needs, but it takes a while to get there.
Yeah, and I think the comparison between her and Georgiana is adept, because you see Georgiana still doing that, and her grief. I think she might be over the grief of her parents dying, but what she's not over is the grief of losing Otis. And so you see that snark and that cruelness come out in her too, like with the suitors. I mean, was it the same suit? Now, when she's walking along the promenade with Mary's walking behind her, she's walking next to that gentleman. Is that the same guy whose carriage they stole? Because it looked like the same guy to me. I thought it was the same guy who she said in the tea shop in episode 1, that man just proposed to me this morning. I thought it was the same guy.
No, it's
okay.
a different guy. It's a different man.
He looked, because Mary said a different name, and I was like, oh wait, but he looked the same to me, so then I was confused.
Well, they have similar looks, but
But
obviously
Georgiana obviously turned him away by saying something terrible in his ear.
Yes. And well, it couldn't be any worse than in the first episode when she said, I'd sooner be boiled alive than accept your proposal. So, I mean, she's, she is not tolerating these fortune hunters at all.
She's not tolerating anybody outside of her circle, because even Lockhart, he's not pursuing her. I mean, he's obviously interested, but he's not pursuing her, and she's rude to him as often as possible.
Yeah, sure. Definitely her immediate response to everybody is putting up a guard.
And that comes out of her pain and her grief. And I think that's similar to what Augusta is doing. And it took Charlotte to break that down.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, similar events. And it's interesting, Colburn's approach on teaching and what Charlotte should be doing as a governess. And of course, as you have indicated, the first thing he says is teach them to behave like ladies before books. Before reading books, And I love that Charlotte comes back and says, there's nothing unladylike about reading,
Yeah. And it's clear that even when you brought up the snails earlier, she's looking for things that engage them, that she can teach them through. She's speaking to them on their level, on how they're reached. And I think just watching her do that, and that she did that, I think it impacted Colburn in a way he didn't expect.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he had his thoughts about how things should be, but then he saw sort of some of the enthusiasm that came out of his girls, as it were. Yeah. And I suspect, Charlotte would have done the same thing with her brothers and sisters that she was helping teach, try to find things that interest them and engage them, which is a great approach.
And that's how her mind works. That's who she is.
Yeah.
And so you see Augusta in that, throwing the unmarriageable thing in her face. And the whole purpose is so she doesn't have to care for anybody else who might leave. I mean, a governess position is not permanent. They could be let go. The child could age out. There's so many different reasons why a governess would leave or no longer be in your life. And that's just one more person that she might have to care for that is going to leave her.
It's a good point. And obviously she was in the habit of running them off.
Yeah. And absolutely. I mean, the things she said were so mean.
She did, especially in that scene where, so Charlotte's trying to do what Colburn asks, and they're working on embroidery.
Yeah, that's the scene I'm talking about.
Yeah, and Augusta does this embroidery and puts a Miss Hayward spinster on it. And like she's trying to find the thing that will hurt Charlotte the most. And it's interesting. Wheatley's response to it is she dropped a stitch or two.
I know. I was bringing
it up later on in the next, in another scene.
I love Mrs. Wheatley.
And yes, and it's obvious that I'm sorry, I'm spacing on the child's name, Leonora, Leo, they call her. She doesn't want anything to do with embroidery, as she pokes her finger, and complains about that right before we see the Miss Haywood spinster embroidery. But it's, so no wonder she wanted to get them into something else.
I do want to bring up Leonora's response, because in Augustus' meanness, she said, how are you going to teach me how to be marriageable when it's something you spectacularly failed at doing? And Charlotte says, I've never been to France, but yet my French is passable. But
Yeah.
Leonora says, yeah, like being a pirate, never having gutted a man.
Yeah.
I love that kid.
Yeah. No, she is great. The yeah, it's amazing how Augusta has no qualms about being really mean to Charlotte.
Yeah.
But I think it's for the reasons you were stating. And
Mhm.
she knows nothing so about Charlotte, really.
Yeah.
And of course, we'll get into later what happens that changes that.
Yeah. So another thing that happens is Edward and Esther, when he sees her in the streets, I like that I wrote down, he said, forgive me, I didn't expect to find you here. You're the one who walked out to her to go see her.
And he was waiting in one of the shops for her to come by.
I don't know that he was waiting for her, but when he saw her, he went out to go get her.
I think he was waiting for her. I trust that man, not at all.
Not me either. But what I like about it is he just thinks that his charm and his charisma will just warm her back up to him, and she's going to fall back into his arms. And he says, what can I do to convince you that I'm sincere, that I'm repentant, I'm truly repentant? And as she walks away, she says, you could try drowning yourself.
I know, that's a great line. And even before that, Esther is like, I don't remember the exact words she uses, but she knows that he has created contrivance to talk to her.
That was the word she used.
Yeah. And so she is not being fooled by him, which I'm happy to hear.
And I really genuinely think he thinks he's going to get over on her.
He does.
And it's infuriating. Like, I love Jack Fox, but he's not as likable of a cat in this season. He was more of a likable cat last season, even though he was a villain. He's not very likable right now.
Yeah. And what's happened, of course, for Esther is that now she's had the love of a really genuine man for the last 9 months. And he's the one who really saw who Edward was and brought that to a higher level of understanding for Esther.
And when Lennox and Edward, after the mess dinner and the dance, they show up at Lady Denham's house, Edward even says something to her about that. And he says, you're different. And she says, because I got away from your influence.
Right.
That's why I'm different. It's not because I am an entirely changed person. It's because who I was following was the problem.
Right. Who I was totally being influenced by.
Yeah. And then this is where Allison starts to irritate me too. And she gets the invitation, and she can't even tell that it's not her Captain Carter. She just sees a red
outside,
coat and is like, oh, he's coming in his red coat, and then sees him and is like, well, that's rude. But then as she is just over exerting her naivete and her just nonsense about this, it drives me crazy, but it baffles Fraser too. I called her foolhardy in romance, where she doesn't even know his name, and she says, the handsome one. I can't say if he's handsome.
Which I love Fraser's response. And from the beginning, and especially this episode, shows us the contrast between Captain Carter and Fraser, Captain, or whatever his title is.
They're both Captain.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought. That Fraser is going to be really more of the kind of person that Esther says you should, marry, is the one who pursues you and won't take no for an answer, basically.
Yeah.
No matter how much you spurn them.
I'm fully Team Fraser.
Yeah. Although I have to agree with her that Carter is very cute.
he is handsome. But Fraser has the better accent. So
well, Fraser is obviously more mature, and Carter
and more into the things that Allison is.
Right. And Carter is more false in the way he presents himself.
Yeah.
He doesn't know that poet at all that they discuss.
He lacks depth, I think. He's very,
He's like her. He's young and
Yes.
immature.
Well, I think Allison has more depth than him just because she's been educated and she cares about those things and she wants to, like, part of her coming to say that, yes, she wanted to find a marriage, but she was also excited to go out and find that adventure like Charlotte had, and I think that they both have that in common, but I just think that Allison cares more about other things. And we saw in episode 1 where she's not as naive as we think. She just portrays that, where it's,
Right.
we have to do this. This is, other things are at stake. And I think that Captain Carter is more of the typical sort of throwaway character. I don't want to say throwaway character because that sounds mean. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, he's not into poetry. He's not into reading. He's not about expanding his mind. He's just pretty girl. I'm a good looking guy. I'm military. I need a wife. Hey, look at that. We're done.
Very well. I don't know if he even thinks he needs a wife. I think he
wants one.
Wants to flirt with a girl.
Yeah.
He wants to woo her, and I don't think he's thought beyond that.
No, I think he's just a happy-go-lucky kind of guy.
Right. Is it the beginning of this episode yes, it is, that they received the invitation to the dinner, and we know right away that Coburn has specially invited Charlotte. Miss Lennox. Oh yeah, not Coburn. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Lennox has specifically invited Miss Charlotte Haywood.
That's real subtle, dude.
Yeah. So, but they're all excited, and we see the invitation also go to Lady Denham and Esther. And of course, Esther's concerned that they'll see Edward, which she was right to be concerned about that.
Yeah. I do like that when we see them receive it, Lady D is kind of having fun at Esther's expense because Esther's doing grunt work for her. She's setting the flower arrangement. And then when the letter comes in, the servant goes to give it to Lady D and she says, give it to Esther or give it to Lady Babington. So I like that that's kind of what the relationship is that poking fun. They understand each other deeper, and it's really nice to see that.
Right. And they have some similarity.
Oh, absolutely they do. Yeah.
We kind of skipped over the part where Lockhart and Georgiana kind of spar when they meet each other on the street.
Yeah, I touched on that a little bit, but I didn't go into detail about it.
Yeah. But she's with
Mary.
With Mary. Oh, right. That's right. Yeah.
That's when she's walking with that other guy who I thought was Lord Kingsley.
Right.
And he comes out, and that's, because he's not pursuing her, but she's still cruel to him. What I like about that is that he doesn't bother him at all. And I think that she's trying to ruffle him, and he's clearly unruffled by anything she says. Right. And I think that frustrates her.
Yeah. Yes, and it reminds it a little bit of how Esther regarded, Babington.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of Babington-like. Babington didn't come back, but they gave us Babington-like characters, I guess.
Yeah, and one thing that Justin, the head writer, talked about in one of the interviews I saw is that they really want to uphold the love between Esther and Babington. So they have not really written him out. And who knows, maybe sometime they've left the door open there anyway.
I would like, and I don't think it was the writers who took him. I think Mark Stanley declined to rejoin, at least for the season 2. I don't know anything about season 3.
Right.
But it would be nice to see him appear even once, just like a little cameo, to come back and see his wife, and that we could see that again.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. And I think Mark Stanley, he was already committed to all these other projects.
Yeah, he's a really good actor. So
he's really good.
It's not like he's sitting around waiting for offers to come in. Like he's a busy guy.
I don't think it was so much that, he just didn't want the story to continue as it was.
No,
he was just
I don't either.
Otherwise occupied.
He had other things going on. He declined to go in.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, this is where we see Esther in the church. And she goes in there for solace, and she goes into the grieve, but of course the Hankins siblings, I mean, they could not physically put their foot in their mouths any better or any more than they do whenever they speak to people.
And it's very typical of the age. And I can
Mhm.
remember people somewhat like that even when I was growing up,
Yeah.
you know,
Hmm.
even more recently.
Yeah. But the good thing about I can't remember her first name, Miss Hankins. Do you remember her first name?
I don't know if I think we have been told, but I don't
Yeah,
remember.
yeah. But what's great about this, she is being nosy and insufferable, kind of, and she is saying things that she doesn't know what's going on, so it's hard for her to say those things. And clearly, she's upset her, but she goes out to tell Esther about this midwife. She offers her a line of hope without any anything in return, just because she wants to be kind and help Esther. That's her only aim. She sees a woman in pain and she wants desperately to help. And you
And
could
it's
like hear it.
interesting that she definitely chooses to do it away from her brother.
Yeah. Hmm. And
And
she
I
lied
think
about
she
it.
is, yeah, I think that she is she's very empathetic no matter
Hmm.
how she comes across initially.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
she's very empathetic to women in particular,
Hmm.
because of her own struggles, I'm sure.
Hmm.
Just with not being married and how
Yeah.
people are treated. And so she kind of defers to her brother and the societal view, but she really wants to help people and
Hmm.
be kind. She's very
Yeah.
kind.
She says, I'm a Christian woman with Christian feeling.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
that's her only thing. And I love that at the mess dinner, Esther repaid that. And it's a shame it had to be with Edward. But I don't
but
think I don't think Esther thought she could get anyone else to do it. But she just, and the look on Miss Hankins' face when she was on the side of the room waiting for someone to ask her to dance and no one was, it was heartbreaking to see it
it
look on her. And
was.
that's kudos to that
and
actress.
and she was probably happy to dance with anyone. She
Exactly.
doesn't know what a
No, she doesn't know
cad
how bad he
Edward
is.
is. He's a good looking young man,
Mhm.
and tall.
Yeah. And when Lady Denham says, who is this meant to humiliate? Esther says, no one. It's
Yeah,
repaying her kindness. And
right.
of
And
course, she
seeing
says,
how
trying to
far
see
Edward's willing to go
to
to
appear
prove he's a
human.
human being. I love that line.
But
Don't
it's just,
you?
I do. Yeah. I wrote that. I paused it so I could write it down exactly. And so I think that this, whereas the first episode I was like, oh my gosh, poor Georgiana staying with this woman and this guy, that's horrible. But then I think this episode endeared me to Miss Hankins because
Yeah,
she is, although she's not as young as Charlotte, she doesn't have as many opportunities as Charlotte anymore because she is officially an on the shelf spinster.
right.
She has the same sort of feelings as Charlotte. She's the
Right.
same sort of empathetic. She's the same sort of kind and genuine, and she actually cares about people. So I
And
like
she
her.
is she's the only character that we've seen in this series, 1 and 2, who is openly a Christian and is a good person.
Yeah. Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. The others kind of hide that away.
Yeah.
And we move into Arthur and Tom and Lennox and that whole triangle, and I love it. But Arthur's vision for the Theatre Royale, Sanditon, I think it's actually a good idea. And I know that Tom sees it as a gamble because there's no guaranteed money coming in. People will have to go in there and try it out. But entertainment is always good in the town. That's how you get people to vacation there. They don't want a vacation there to sit in their homes. Like they want a vacation to go out and do things and have things. So it's good, but Tom is hesitant because of the amount of investment it would require
Well,
in
I'm
health,
kind of
right?
hoping Georgiano help him with that.
Mm-hmm.
I would love it if Georgiana invested in that and Arthur's plan came to
Me
fruition.
too. That's a good idea.
It, yeah, that would be cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like right after that, when Tom he requires Arthur to go with him. I don't know why he needs Arthur at his side all the time. But when they go give Lennox a tour and Tom starts talking about the improvements and Arthur gets all excited. Yes, I've been drawing up grand plans for this theater and all this. And poor Arthur, like his heart is to better Sanditon. His heart is to make it fundable and livable and enjoyable. And that is not Tom's vision is right now is just looking for guaranteed money. And I was a little surprised he told Lennox that the whole aim in getting them to stay there is to repay a debt. I was a little surprised he gave that information up that quickly. So you'd think that you would want someone to come there without, they don't want you thinking of the owner of the town having so much debt they have to repay.
Right. Yeah. Well, and he attributes it to, it's a way for us to hear Tom's view that this is a legacy from his brother, and which is, of course, I still hate that Tom is so oblivious to the fact that he was not in love with Eliza, but.
And this is where he says to Lennox, I think you and my brother would have a lot in common. And Arthur says,
I'm thinking, Charlotte, yes.
Arthur says, some things.
Yeah. No, that's a great line. And I love the way when Tom turns to take Lennox to show him the site that he has in mind for a permanent barracks, and the way that Arthur looks at the camera, that's a great look.
There's another little Easter egg I want to point out that I'm sure everyone has noticed, but the villas that he's showing him are called Mansfield villas. Which is Mansfield Park, obviously, is a novel by Jane Austen.
It's a reference to other Jane Austen work.
So since the season 1, when they told us how many Easter eggs, like they were putting Easter eggs all over the back for Jane Austen, I try to watch for in the background. That one was pretty blatant. There's no possible way I could miss that since the camera zoned in on it. But now I forgot about it until I saw that. Oh no, I'm supposed to be looking for this stuff. So look for
those. That's why what makes watching this series good repeatedly. You can watch episodes again and again and
find something new every time. Yeah.
Yep.
And speaking of the military again, we see Georgiana and Allison going through the military base again. What?
Georgiana and Allison's like, is it proper for us to be here, or what's the exact word she uses? But anyway, and Georgiana's like, I don't care what how people think, or if I'm sick to death of hearing what is conventional,
what I should not do.
Yeah, what I should and shouldn't do. And but it's weird that they went there, and then I guess it's a way of the writers giving us the the setup between Carter and Frasier and the contrast. This is where the battle is going to be for Allison, as it were.
Yeah, it is for sure. I can't believe that there's nobody in that whole military encampment who's not like, hey man, you can't be here. I'm just gonna let you walk all the way through this encampment and get to your destination.
They were probably so surprised.
maybe that's it.
People are so surprised sometimes that they don't react very quickly. And of course, we find out that it's Frasier who does like escort them out. He is that person only after Carter asked for the first dance.
Yeah. And I think that Frasier's wit and his sarcasm is going to blend well with Allison. I think it's actually going to endear her to him in the end, because she says, Georgiana says, do you not have a heart? And he said, nope, just a cold hard rock in this place.
Yeah, that was a great line. Yeah. And Georgiana, she can involved Charlotte in the first series in doing things that were less than acceptable.
Yeah.
And now she's doing that with Allison, who knows that she probably shouldn't be doing these things, but is very willing.
But this time it's for Allison instead of being for Georgiana.
That's true.
So she thinks I'm being a friend the way Charlotte was being a friend, which she is. Georgiana's being a good friend. It's just I just wish that they would do it in a little more of a realistic way. Yeah,
that's right. But it's the whole making the argument that she wants to go against convention.
Yeah.
Repeatedly, So interesting.
And it's interesting that she has that tie to Lockhart without even talking to Lockhart about that yet.
Yeah.
And then we see one of my favorite scenes in this episode was Arthur waking up to Lockhart sketching him. And
I know.
Arthur thinks he's being robbed.
All I have is a silk scarf or something like that. He says, what does he say?
A handkerchief?
A silk handkerchief. That's all I have. Like, yeah, somebody's going to rob his silk handkerchief. Yeah. Funny that he sat down there and fell asleep, huh?
On a rock. His pillow was a rock.
Yeah. He said he's leaning against it. Yeah.
Like
but it is.
not Colburn, that Lockhart, what he compares him to, and we're seeing this theme in this episode a lot. And we saw it in episode 1 when Arthur said, I don't see why we should infuse over these guys just because they killed Frenchmen. Lockhart here also says, gives him compliments comparatively to the French. Saying, right. You'd be on display at the Tuileries, and I can't remember the other thing he said, but both of them were complimentary because you would fit in French culture perfectly.
Right.
And so that, I think
at least that's his concept of him.
Yeah. And so I think that binds them too a little bit of their, they both don't hate people just because they're in a war against them. It's not
right.
And I think that was the time. I think when the military was fighting Napoleon, it was all French are bad.
Right.
But Arthur and Lockhart are not of that opinion that everyone's bad just because we're fighting this one dude from that.
Right. And I also think that they're drawn to each other because they're not men that are in the military or trying to find women necessarily, but I also think that Lockhart pursues Arthur because of his relationship with Georgiana.
But I think that's part of it, but I think Arthur's a little bit ridiculous. And I think Lockhart likes that.
Yeah, those unusual characters. Yeah, that's right. He's different, but that's also why Georgiana and Arthur are such good friends. And I think he's drawn to that.
I think it's obvious that Lockhart wants to, obviously, because when he's drawing Arthur, he convinces him to help him get Georgiana to sit for a portrait. But I do think that from the moment Arthur said that about the swaggering brutes, I think Lockhart was like, I like this guy.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, that's right. And he kind of liked him already to begin with,
Yeah, and how can you not like Arthur, honestly?
I don't know.
There are people in the group who are like, Arthur annoyed me. How? He's one of my favorite people.
Yeah, he's all good-hearted and kind, and
there's nothing mean or bad about him in any way at all. I love him.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It was interesting when I was just thinking about the girls and the magnifying glass and all that, and when Justin was asked about who he could create an ongoing series with of the characters in this series, in this first part, he said the Hankins and Dr. Fuchs, and also Augusta and Leonora, that he just really enjoyed their characters.
Yeah, and there's a lot of depth to Augusta, and we see that when they are out on was it a river that they're on?
Or a pond or something,
whatever. But Augusta is watching Charlotte and Leo very intently. And what I think is that she seems to warm up from afar.
Yeah.
Her face softens when she sees how Charlotte is with Leo, but she's not willing to give in yet. She still has boundaries to test. And I think we see it later when she convinces her to play that spinet. Is that what it's called?
Charlotte, well, we need to talk about why
we're going
story goes that way. Yeah.
But we see that that's a boundary that she's testing. But if you watch her facial expressions, she's softening towards her. And I think that that's why she starts to go for the big guns. And even in this moment when right after she's watching Charlotte and Leo play around, they pull up the snails from the water, and Leo's asking questions about Charlotte's mom, and they're having that conversation. Augusta's angry at every show and reception of Charlotte's compassion. She gets angry at it. Every time Leonora accepts her compassion, and every time Charlotte gives compassion, Augusta gets angry and she lashes out.
Right. And it's why it's like you were saying, it's because she doesn't want to have somebody else leave her. And if she's angry because she's starting to like her.
Yeah.
And it reminds me a little bit of the very first episode when Sydney was so mean to Charlotte. It's a similar kind of reaction.
Yep, absolutely.
I'm putting on my defenses. I don't want to like you.
Yeah.
So we're and if you and I are together, then they are entering the assembly rooms, for the mess dinner.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting to me that Georgiana comes up to Charlotte and said, just as Charlotte says, well, the last time I danced in Sanditon, and Georgiana says, was with Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they didn't ever get to dance at that last dance.
No, she's just saying the last time she did dance was, well, no, because the last time she did dance was with James Stringer.
Yeah, so it's not really true.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, that just hit me like a ton of bricks when she said that. I'm like, no, that was the whole problem. They didn't even get to dance in that last ball.
That's sad.
Anyway, and then
I would like to point out Lennox is on like his 5th hairstyle at this mess dinner.
Yeah. And so Lennox, well, he has that hat, that comes on and off, and he has to.
Yeah, but when he was walking around town with Tom and Arthur, he had it like gelled up weird. And now this time it's like all over messy and in his forehead. It's like, how many of those do you got?
I guess I'm gonna have to. You're talking about Lennox, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to pay attention to that. I can't say I noticed that. So so when they meet, he asks her something. She replies like, oh, everything's fine. And he could tell that she wasn't really telling the truth. He says, you were being so candid before. Why are you changing? And then she says,
it's shocking that you disassemble.
Yeah. And then she talks about the problem she's having with her charges. And he says, what I do is gain ground. We'll form a plan,
Mm-hmm.
I like that about him, that he really wanted to help her. And anyway,
I think it's intrigue for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
What I like about this opening scene with the mess dinner is that we see all of our characters doing different things. So we get a little update on every one of them in there. And I think that's the benefit of having like a big dance or a big dinner, whatever it is that you get updates on everybody. And I think that was a virtue in season 1 too, with every ball that they had, every time they had something like that we saw that. So we see Lady D come in, who obviously doesn't agree with the midwife and the herbs. And I like what Esther says. She said, there's nothing to lose if all she did was give me a little hope.
Right. Yeah. If nothing else, she gave her help. And yeah, I love that about that interaction as well.
And I think it's interesting that we see her say that just as she spots Edward prowling the edges of the room. And
Lady D says, oh, don't let him bother you. He can't have any effect on us.
He's no threat to either one of us.
Yep. No threat. And then Lady D chastises Georgiana about the sugar boycott. Did
you see Esther's face when she was doing that?
I guess I didn't. What did she do?
That was where Georgiana said, I didn't know you were so deprived. Esther had that smirk, the same smirk that she had at the pineapple luncheon in season 1.
Oh, when
she accosted Lady Denham. Esther had the same look on her face.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Wow. And then we see Arthur introduce Lockhart to Georgiana officially.
Again, yeah.
Yeah. And then
I love this part when Arthur sneaks away to change the table cards. He's just, the way he does it is it's so animated.
I know, it's so great. Much. He just walks around, finds it, moves them together.
And he's so happy to be doing it. He's like almost giggling the whole time he's doing it.
He's like this little matchmaker,
I absolutely thought he was sneaking away to get a biscuit, but totally thought he was going to get a sugar thing.
Something with sugar in it.
Yes, I thought that's why he was sneaking away from Georgiana, and then I'm like, oh, he's not doing that. Okay.
No, he's being thoughtful again.
I mean, you could see him doing that, right? Sneaking away to get a biscuit. I mean,
absolutely, but yeah, no, they were gonna have dinner, so he was probably gonna get something, But yeah, I noticed at this dinner, unlike in the pineapple luncheon, that they did not have a big display of food. I think they learned their lesson about how long it was going to take to shoot the scene and not having the food spoil while it was happening. So
miserable.
Yeah, live and learn, right?
And this is where we start to see too that Carter actually doesn't really connect with Allison in a meaningful way, because he's clearly lying about knowing who Copper is. Right. Or Cooper, it's Cooper.
Yep. And it's very surface.
Yeah, it was just the only thing he sees is a beautiful woman. But I like that she's seated next to Frasier.
Right.
And then we
Right.
see his snark come out. He's clearly into her. Clearly, this whole episode. And he's to the right of her. And he even says at one point, would you like me to ask him to switch seats with me? He is uncommonly handsome after all. So I think he's just, his nature is to be that way. But I really think that that's what's going to attract her, is the constant challenge.
And he's very witty. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then we see the discussion, at least according to my notes, between Lockhart and Georgiana.
Mm-hmm.
And
first, I want to point out Arthur's face when they walk in there and they have to sit next to each
he's
other.
so pleased with himself.
He's like,
isn't he?
Oh, look at this.
Yes, he's very happy with himself.
See, I love Arthur so much.
I do. I do too.
Him. And before we get into the conversation with Lockhart and Georgiana, I want to point out Edward is sitting at the head of the table with Lennox and Lady Denham and Esther. There's someone between him and Esther, but he's at the head, and Tom and Mary are up there too. Because Mary and Lady D are on either side of Lennox, and then it goes Edward, Tom, and then some other lady and Esther. But Edward is at the head of the table with the Colonel.
Right, because the Colonel's honoring him for having brought them there.
Mm-hmm.
And he thinks that, he's so deceived about the relationship of the Denhams.
Yep.
And you see where Georgiana sits, they have her sitting, and then, and also
Arthur
Allison.
has her sitting.
Right. And Allison. And then you see that
Charlotte's with the spinster.
Charlotte's at the spinster end of the table with the Hankins and all that. So interesting, huh?
So yeah, poor Charlotte. But let's dig into Lockhart's conversation with Georgiana. It would be funny if they weren't actually eating lamb.
Yeah. True. I didn't make too many notes about this. Just the
there's contention. She asks why he doesn't leave, and he says, "I'm waiting for it to surprise me." So just
right. He's right, and yet you accepted the invitation. He's being critical of the military, and yet he accepted the invitation to be there. She points that out.
Yeah, out of boredom.
Right. Yep. And any excuse will do.
And he says, "What's your excuse?"
Yeah.
So what I like about this is that in there, Georgiana wants to be someone who doesn't care about society's opinions, but she clearly does. Lennox genuinely doesn't care.
Yeah.
And his aim is to show her that. I think him standing up and giving that speech to Napoleon in the midst of that it was to show her what could happen when you stop caring. Like, look, I'm fine. I made this speech about someone everybody hates and no one asked me to leave.
Yeah, and he is thriving on being that person.
Yeah.
To being the outsider, the outlier, as was said about Sydney before, but Sydney wasn't this kind of outlier.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sydney tried to blend in and stay away. Lennox wants to be the voice that everyone sees and looks at. He wasn't wrong though about what he said. Which was a bummer. No, Napoleon was a bad dude. But what he said was good. And I like
said,
go ahead.
Yeah, he abolished slavery.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he said.
And he realized that ideas, instead of brute strength alone, were what could get things done. And it's not wrong. But Lady Denham is the one who convinced Lennox to let him stay.
Yeah, I know. I love, she says, just ignore him. He's just an artist. I love that line.
And that Arthur, because at first Arthur was a little nervous. Like he was very worried. But then at the end, he was thrilled. And so was Georgiana. Thrilled by it.
Yep.
And you see it by Georgiana then seeks out Lockhart.
Right. And says to him, you did that for my benefit. And he's denying that it was for her benefit. Don't flatter yourself. That was for my amusement. I decided not to care what others thought of me a lot. He said pretty recently.
Yeah, he said I decided not recently. I think he said recently or not that long ago.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, It's not like he's lived his life that way the whole time.
Yeah. So something must have happened there at some point too. to make him realize that it's not worth it for him.
Or he may have gotten a good enough reputation as an artist. He could get away with it now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And Mary is clearly not excited about their their friendship. She's a little nervous.
Yeah. Yep, that's right. Which is interesting.
So it's the next day when Mary asks her about talking to Lockhart, but then we see her at the mess dinner where she sees them and is very concerned. And Georgiana has to say, listen, no more marriage talks. I want to marry on my terms alone. And I think that is, whether or not Lockhart did it for her benefit, what he did was a direct encouragement to Georgiana.
Right.
To truly try to stop caring what other people thought. Because no matter what she does, she's already an outcast because she's a Black woman with money.
Right.
And she's Black and she's a woman and she has money. So all those things put her at the fringe already.
Right. That's very true. And also she has really realized how much power she has that she is not willing to give up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think she'll only marry for love.
Yeah,
which is, that's better. She's the one in control of that. So, so this is when Lennox dances with Charlotte and gives her, gives her the encouragement about the strategy with the girls, with her charges. And
does he say to kill him with a bayonet or something? He says that's
yeah.
what he would do.
but she still takes it the right way.
Yeah.
And says, yes, I need to open myself up to them, so that they can understand who I am. And that's what we see her do later. And it's effective. It
is. And I think that right before we go into, I was going to go into, because I'm going subject by subject. So I want to dive into Augusta in a minute. But this is where this mess hall, it's at the end of the dinner. They, Lennox and Charlotte have a good conversation. She agrees, I should try that. And then she says that Colburn wouldn't like that. And Lennox clearly has a reaction to Colburn.
And because, that now she knows who it is that she's working for. And she didn't know that before. And obviously there is some history there that we don't know about.
Because not only did he have a visible reaction, but he almost dismissed Charlotte from that moment. He's like, oh, it's Colburn you're working for? Okay, good day. And then they zoom in on his face and he's angry. He looks angry. So he's
the second person to have a very negative reaction to Colburn.
And that compiled with Colburn's refusal or adamant saying, I refuse to let you go near the militia to those girls. And then couple that with, trust me, I know what happens with a woman when she falls short of society's expectations. So those three things together, I'm wondering if they're going to collide into one thing.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. I mean, do they have that conversation after they dance?
Yeah,
because they have the first dance before. And then I love that Arthur dances with Georgiana, and Carter, of course, dances with Allison, and that the first dance when they first start.
And Fraser in the background with his dance partner clearly did not take his eyes off Allison one single time.
Right.
His head actually turned with her while he's dancing with someone else. That lady must have felt so loved while you were dancing with her.
If she was aware of it. But, Lennox, obviously when Lennox says to Charlotte, is apologizing for where she sat at the dinner, that she was at the far end of the table. And he was explaining, the convention required this placement. And she says something, I know I'm just a lowly governess. And he says, there's nothing lowly about you, which was a good line.
Yeah. I think he's a bit heavy-handed. I'm fully team Colburn, though. Fully team Colburn.
Well,
I'd rather the mystery about how you feel than
the difference between you and me is that I'm open to both of them.
I'm not.
And seeing where it goes. So just like I wasn't enamored in, is it Sense and Sensibility, the young man that's so beautiful that she, Willoughby. Yes, I was never taken in by Willoughby.
No,
but
I wasn't either.
But
with this, I feel like I put myself in like Charlotte's position of what Lennox said about being a military wife is actually, it's accurate. He said it for a reason. He's not, I don't think he's a dishonest person. So I would hate for Charlotte to have that. I would hate it.
Yeah. I don't know that either of these people, as they are currently presented, would be appropriate for her. So.
Not as they are now. I'm waiting for, but what I have hope for is Colburn and how he receives everything Charlotte says. And I feel like, I don't want him to be another Sydney, because I don't think there should be another Sydney. But like with Sydney, she brought him out. And she helped him. And I see more potential for that with Colburn than I do for Lennox. But I'm not the writer, so I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, this other series I watch, the person who, there were two men sort of vying for one woman, and the person that had her end up with is not who I thought they would. So I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, they've certainly surprised us before.
Yes,
that surprise was not a good one. So they might again, who knows?
Yeah. Well, I don't think we'll find out till the third series.
No.
But
and we kind of see that brought up. I was proud of Charlotte for confiding in Augusta about what she experienced with Sydney. She was very honest. I mean, obviously she didn't give a name, but she was honest. And Augusta tried to take advantage of that. And Augusta received it at first. And I think that's why she lashed out, because Augusta was receiving her compassion and her grief. And Charlotte said, so she told her what happened with Sydney, but then she said, our situations are different, but I know grief too. Right. And Augusta said, we're nothing alike. And that's when she kind of started to fight back. And that's when she convinced her that, hey, I used to play for my parents, so let's go play on this spinnette that's locked away. We're never ever supposed to touch. Let's go play on it.
Of course, she didn't explain that part about it was locked away and never supposed to touch. And so Charlotte tries to take people as honest as she is. And so they go in there, and of course it is absolutely Augusta who has the key to the pianoforte and unlocks it.
Well, she actually gives Charlotte the key to unlock it, so she's technically not guilty.
You're right. She did but she had the key. She's the one who had the key. And then Charlotte starts playing hesitantly at first, but of course, Augusta really wants her to play and play loudly and
play louder.
Yeah, because she wants Colburn to hear it, because she knows he's not going to be happy. But it is a shock to her when Charlotte takes responsibility for it. Yeah. And defends her, protects her. And we see her as she's leaving that day. Am I skipping ahead too far? When Charlotte is walking out later, then Augusta stops her and says, why did you lie for me?
It says, why did you lie to me?
Yeah.
I like that. I think that was it was one of my, not one of my favorite, but it was a really good line, a back and forth, where she said, why did you lie for me? And Charlotte said, why did you lie to me? Right. I like that. It was a parry. I liked it.
It was.
I think that Charlotte, she didn't know why Augusta did it, but she knew that Augusta had a deeper reason for doing what she did. Right. And I think Charlotte understood the pain and grief she was going in. And I think she reconciled it with that. And I think that's why she stood up for her. It was a fine time for Leela to run through there in boy shorts, though.
Yeah. I noticed that. That was so funny.
Could you have picked a worse time to run through there and then declare to your dad, Charlotte said I could do this? Oh, boy.
Yeah.
And this is where Charlotte... Yeah, and this is where Charlotte takes the opportunity to call out Colburn's faults, because he says something about how they'll never be turned into ladies or something like that. She said, I won't shoulder that burden alone. And this is where she calls it a house of silence, a mausoleum. And she says, who even talks in this house? They can't, they get no one listens to Augusta. No one talks to her. No one will give her any credence. She can't become a woman until that happens. Leonora is ignored largely. She's told she can't do anything that she likes to do, anything she wants to do. She's bold and she's direct and she's unapologetic. Right. And part of that, I think, is because she's assuming she just got fired.
Yeah, no, she thinks so. Yeah. She thinks he's fired her. And absolutely.
It's that smile on his face when I feel like I've heard it before. He's like, you want to leave. And I think Colburn also feels that deeply, that she wants to leave. And he realizes in that moment how much he wants her to stay.
Exactly.
And she says, she's obviously confused. He's like, same time tomorrow? But his voice is so soft when he says same time tomorrow.
Right.
Happening. And that's where Wheatley goes up to him and says, I believe you owe me a shilling. And he gave her a shilling.
Yeah. Yeah. So we don't know if the time went by, but obviously he capitulated.
Yeah. So
he knew that he'd
something.
lost that bet.
Yeah. And then where we end the episode is something I kind of assumed was going to happen. And you and I speculated all last season, and all of the fandom did, on whether it was going to be Esther's baby or Claire's baby. And it's obviously Claire's baby.
Yeah. And it's obviously Edward's.
Yeah. Well,
baby.
I mean, she says it's Edward's.
Yeah. Well, it's 9 months. It's.
But I mean,
Is it? We don't know.
It has been 9 months since season 1 ended, but she was with Edward a few months before, because she was with Edward before Babington's wedding. It was the one.
Right. Right.
So
before
she
the
says
very
it's
end.
Edward's. It could be Crow's. It could be anybody's.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that comes out.
I do hope it is Edward's, because I want him to have some consequences.
Exactly.
I mean, how are they going to know? They can't prove that they didn't have the technology back then to prove whose father it was.
Right. Right.
What I was surprised about is how dirty and disheveled she was, and how desperate she was.
She had to be desperate to show up there.
Yeah, because even Lady Denham said, I told you never to come in here. And when she said she was pregnant, Lady Denham just scoffed and went to turn. Yeah, that's what she said. Because Clara's a survivor. Clara has manipulated when she needs to manipulate. And that's why I think she declared it's Edward's right then, when it may not be.
But it got her Lady D to turn around.
Yeah, and Claire knew that was what would get her attention.
Right. And but one thing that we did skip over, I think that it's important to point out, was the scene where Lennox involves Tom in gambling.
Oh yeah, I did write that down. Yeah.
And stakes him the £5, because of course at first Tom's like, oh no, I have to protect my money, and he says, oh, here, I'll stake you. And then when Tom's playing, basically it's like craps, the game that they're playing is similar.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a clue how it's played or what's going on. I don't think
he knows what staking means.
Maybe, but he plays it, and fortunately he wins. And when Tom says to Lennox, what would have happened if I'd lost? And all Lennox says is, you'd have to pay back the stake.
Double.
But yeah. Well, it would have been a lot more than that to pay back everybody.
And I think that Tom, he was almost bullied into, and this is, Lennox is showing some character traits here that I don't like. Lennox,
yes, I agree.
He almost bullied Tom into doing it. Tom's his own man. Tom's an adult. He could have said no. But Lennox is clearly more confident in himself and understands that Tom needs him more. So Tom is going to do what he can to appease him. And I think Lennox understood that. So Lennox almost bullies him into it. And Arthur is the one saying, Tom, don't.
Yeah.
And Tom didn't want to. Yeah.
Right. Arthur is the voice of reason. And this is the only part of Lennox I've seen so far that I really dislike.
Other than his look at Colburn.
Huh?
Other than the look on his face when Colburn was described.
Well, I don't know. He may have a good reason for that look. I don't know. Yeah, you've already made up your mind.
I've chosen my side, Janice.
Yes, I realize that. But anyway, so definitely set up intrigue for future episodes.
What I want to say about that too is that I can't tell if Tom's winnings and the thrill of it all, if it excited him or if it caused him great fear.
Let's hope it scared him. Me
too, because at first that's what I thought, but then he smiled. I'm like, oh, no. Because
fortunately, Arthur grabbed the money.
But I mean, the whole problem with Sanditon before is, in Tom's own words, he flew too close to the sun. There was an excitement about building. He was always talking about how great it was, how excited he was, and how the thrill of it all. And then losing all that money made him realize, okay, no, I need to tone it down. But then this whole gambling thing, it seemed like he was a little excited again. Like, no, stay calm.
What do you want to bet? He decides to do gambling to try and make money to pay off his debt, and he just loses more.
That's what I'm worried about.
Yep.
And I hope that Arthur I'm really hoping that, because Arthur has been, his character development, even just in the first 2 episodes alone, huge. enormous. I hope
Yeah.
that Arthur can be a voice of reason for Tom that actually pulls him out of where he's at and
And
convinces him to do the
maybe
right thing.
Arthur will tell things to Mary to help, that the two of them will work together to try and
Maybe,
stop
yeah,
him
because they seem to be more
from
the same
following
side.
his own worst instincts, which is, I think, what I'm worried about for Tom.
That is Tom's worst quality, is his instincts.
Yeah, yeah,
They're all in the wrong direction.
yeah.
How can someone have such terrible instincts? They're all
Right.
bad.
Well, I mean, they're not all bad. The fact that he
Most
wanted
of
to
them.
turn the village into a, you know, more to develop it.
But that was an
But
idea more than an instinct.
yeah, maybe you're right about that.
All right, so let's sum up. We see Charlotte starts her governess position. Augusta is intentionally fighting her. She likes her, she relates to her, she's softening to her, but Augusta doesn't want to. So Augusta fights back, very cruel. Leonora seems to like Charlotte just fine. Colburn has a softening he only has a softening when Charlotte confronts him and directly challenges him. Then he gets soft. Lennox is clearly wants Charlotte, whether it's because he wants to have a relationship with her or whether he just enjoys her company. I don't know, but he clearly has an issue with Colburn. The mess dinner happened. The mess dance and dinner happened. Charlotte is friendly with Lennox. I don't think she feels anything else yet. I don't think she can yet. I don't think that's even on her radar to feel anything more than friendly with anybody that is a man.
I do think that she appreciates his advice.
Yes, as a friend, but I think that there's not going to be romance on her radar for her for a while. Right. And we see that Frasier is into Allison, but hiding it. Carter wants to be into Allison because she's pretty. And Allison thinks at one point in this, at the mess dinner, she said to Charlotte, I'm trying to take Georgiana's advice and go slow or something along those lines. And Charlotte
not show she's so interested, not give into it so quickly.
And Charlotte said, I do hope you will go slower. She said, but feel my heart. Can't you already tell it's too late? You just found out his name a day ago.
Yeah, right.
So Allison is going to have, she's going to get some lessons, I think, in what it means to love. And I think we are going to see a huge change in her by if not the end of this season, into season 3, we're going to see her being forced to learn a harsh lesson in that. And I think she's going to be the better for it. Georgiana and Lockhart clearly have some sort of connection, though Georgiana is mean to him. Lockhart and Arthur love each other because even at the end of the mess dinner, Lockhart said, I have some port wine. Would you like to come join me for a nightcap, Arthur? And they go off together. So yeah, they're friends. Edward is still trying to accost Esther. He's trying to convince Lady Denham that he's changed. I think he's the one who convinced Lennox to take him along to Lady Denham's house so he could be there.
I'm sure he did. Because Lennox wants him to pay for his commission, not enlistment, but his, what do they call it? Commission. Yeah, commission. Mm-hmm. And so he wants to make sure that, he doesn't know he's going to get the money from them, but he's yeah, I'm sure you'd think so.
And Esther is not falling for anything at all that Edward is throwing at them in any capacity. No ties to, remember the first time I danced with you, I'm apologetic, I'm repentant. None of that works on her because she's not stupid. And
Esther is going to be the one to really challenge whether or not Clara is carrying Edward's baby.
I think she'll believe it because the last conversation she had with Clara told her what they did.
Yep.
And Edward didn't deny it.
And at least in those pictures, Clara is about ready to pop.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think Esther's going to challenge that it's Edward's at all. I think she's going to think that this is how far he's fallen. This is how bad and depraved he is what she's. I think it's going to give her another edge to hate him.
That may be, and also, but she will challenge what Clara is doing to insert herself into the situation, and she'll feel like she has to stay there and protect Lady D, not only against Edward but also against Clara.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see her definitely fighting Clara directly. Yeah, absolutely. It's the same way that she's going against Edward. Only I think she'll be more. I don't think she'll be more verbal about it with Clara, except for Clara will be living there, so she'll have more opportunity. So maybe that.
Right.
Because I mean, we all saw that picture from season 2 with Clara in the nice dress, her hair up nice, and she's at the table with Lady Dedham and Esther. So clearly Lady Dedham starts taking care of Clara.
Yep. Well, she probably feels an obligation to, because she
Yeah.
set up the situation of them all being under the same roof.
Yeah, and it's Edwards and Claire, so it's relatives on both sides. So we end with Augusta appears to have some sort of softening to Charlotte, and Clara comes back with a baby. I think that's a general summarization of what happened. So
Yep.
next Monday, we'll go over episode 3, or you'll see us. We'll go over it before Monday, but you'll see it next Monday. We're going over episode 3. I'm so glad that they aired these first 2 episodes for some together, because then I can get ahead of the recaps, and now the recaps can come out the day after, because
absolutely.
you get an episode ahead all the time. So
that's great.
Yeah. If you have any questions about what Janice and I are doing here, what you think we're wrong about some things, you want to give us your input. I have a lot of emails I haven't responded to yet, but I'm getting back into the swing of things. So I did actually take a real break from the Sanditon Chronicles in that month that we didn't record.
Right. Yep.
So I'm getting back into it. If you have anything you want to say to us about the podcast, or give feedback, or give your perspective on this, we'd like to share it with everybody, and you can send it out to us at the.sanditonchronicles@gmail.com. Join the conversation on our Facebook group, which is the Sanditon Chronicles Sanditon Family Fan Club. We have our spoiler ban will be up by the time you see this, so we're just free discussions, except for when the next episode comes out. So you still have to maintain quiet for that. But you can join us there. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter as well, under the Sanditon Chronicles. And until next week, we will see you. Bye.
Bye.